Every career has turning points that don't look like turning points. A meeting where you stayed quiet, a negotiation where you backed off too early, a risk you didn't take, an opportunity you didn't pursue, a conversation you avoided. From the outside, these moments look small, but inside, something was happening. An emotion was moving through you, shaping your behavior long before you realized it. Most people think their career is shaped by strategy, skill, or timing, but a surprising amount of it is shaped by the emotional supply chain, the path an emotion takes from its origin to the moment it influences your professional decisions. Once you understand that path, you begin to see why certain patterns repeat. You begin to see why some people rise faster. You begin to see why some careers compound and others stall. You begin to see the emotional architecture beneath professional life. Welcome back to the Risk Manager's Guide to Money. I'm Jay Malcolm, and today we're exploring how emotions move through your professional system, how they influence your decisions, your risk tolerance, your ambition, your negotiations, your relationships, and ultimately your earning power. This isn't about being emotional, it's about understanding the structure beneath your reactions. It's about seeing how emotions travel through your internal operating system and shape the way you show up in your career. When you understand the emotional supply chain, you stop thinking your career is random. You start seeing the system beneath your behavior. And once you see the system, you can change the trajectory. Every emotion in your career begins somewhere. Sometimes it starts with a comment in a meeting. Sometimes it starts with a performance review. Sometimes it starts with a comparison. Someone your age getting promoted faster. Sometimes it starts with memory, a moment in your life where speaking up didn't go well. Origin points are subtle, they're quick, and they're easy to miss. But they set the entire emotional supply chain in motion. They determine whether you lean in or pull back. They determine whether you take a risk or avoid it. They determine whether you negotiate or settle. Most people never see the origin point, they only see the outcome. After an emotion forms and moves into interpretation, the first transfer. This is where your mind begins assigning meaning to the moment. Interpretation is shaped by your professional history. It's shaped by your early work experiences. It's shaped by the environments you've been in. It's shaped by the stories you've learned about yourself. Two people can receive the same feedback and interpret it differently. One sees opportunity, one sees threat. One sees growth, one sees inadequacy. The first transfer determines whether the emotion becomes fuel or friction. As the emotion moves deeper, it enters the processing centers, the emotional hubs that evaluate whether an emotion is familiar, dangerous, or tied to a past professional experience. These processing centers remember everything. They remember the boss who dismissed you. They remember the job where you felt undervalued. They remember the promotion you didn't get. They remember the risk that didn't pay off. Processing centers don't care about the present moment. They care about patterns. They care about protecting you from repeating old pain. This is where many careers quietly stall, not because of skill, but because of emotional pattern recognition. Every supply chain has bottlenecks, careers do too. Some people get stuck at the moment of speaking up, some get stuck at the moment of asking for more, some get stuck at the moment of taking a risk, some get stuck at the moment of leaving a job that no longer fits. Bottlenecks create delays, they create hesitation, they create missed opportunities. A bottleneck is not a flaw, it's a signal, a place where the emotional supply chain needs clarity. As emotions move through your professional system, they can become distorted. Old stories can exaggerate them, old failures can reshape them, old environments can influence them. Distortions are why a small comment can feel like a threat. They're why a simple request can feel like criticism. They're why a new opportunity can feel like danger. Distortions are not irrational, they're historical. They show you where your emotional supply chain has been shaped by experience. Once you see the distortion, the emotion loses power. Eventually, the emotion reaches distribution, the moment it becomes visible in your professional life. Distribution can look like confidence, it can look like hesitation, it can look like over explaining, it can look like silence, it can look like ambition, it can look like avoidance. Distribution is the final stage of the supply chain, the moment your internal system becomes your external behavior. This is where careers accelerate or stall. Some emotions don't arrive on time. They show up after the meeting, after the conversation, after the opportunity. Delayed emotions are why you think of the perfect response hours later. They're why you feel anger long after the moment passed. They're why you realize you should have negotiated only after the offer is signed. Delayed shipments are not failures, they're a result of bottlenecks and distortions. They're the mind catching up to the moment. Understanding delayed shipments helps you prepare for the next moment instead of punishing yourself for the last one. A healthy emotional supply chain is not one without emotion. It's one where emotions move cleanly through the system. Optimization happens when you understand your original points. It happens when you recognize your bottlenecks, when you see your distortions clearly. It happens when you build environments that support emotional clarity. When the supply chain becomes efficient, your career becomes efficient. You negotiate better, you take smarter risks, you communicate clearly, you position yourself more strategically. Your earning power compounds because your emotional system stops working against you. The emotional supply chain is not fixed. It evolves, it adapts, it becomes more accurate as you grow. Old bottlenecks dissolve, old distortions soften, old patterns lose their influence. Your emotional system becomes an asset instead of a liability. It becomes part of your professional edge. It becomes part of your long term compounding. This is how careers accelerate, not just through skill, but through emotional clarity. As your emotional supply chain matures, something subtle begins to happen. The system doesn't just become more accurate, it becomes capable of handling more volume, more responsibility, more pressure, more visibility, more complexity. This is the moment in a career where people begin to separate, not because of talent, not because of intelligence, but because their internal system can now scale. Scaling doesn't mean feeling less, it means processing more without losing clarity. It means absorbing tension without distorting your decisions. It means navigating high stakes environments without your internal system collapsing under the weight of the moment. People who scale internally rise externally. They become the ones who can lead bigger teams, manage larger portfolios, handle more ambiguity, and operate at high levels without burning out. A scalable emotional supply chain is one of the most valuable assets in a career because it determines how far your capability can actually travel. As the system scales, something else begins to shift. Your emotional supply chain starts sending clear signals to the professional world around you. People underestimate how much of career advancement is signal based. Confidence is a signal, composure is a signal, clarity is a signal, responsiveness is a signal. The ability to stay steady in uncertain environments is a signal. When your internal supply chain is clean, those signals become consistent. People begin to trust your judgment. They begin to rely on your presence. They begin to see you as someone who can handle more than your current role obligates. This is how reputations compound. This is how opportunities find you instead of you chasing them. This is how earning power grows, not just through skill, but through the signals your system sends to the market. A clean emotional supply chain doesn't just change how you feel, it changes how you're perceived. And perception is one of the most powerful currencies in a career. So, if you remember one thing from this episode, remember this. Every career has a visible trajectory, the promotions, the opportunities, the compensation, the reputation. But beneath that trajectory is an invisible system, the emotional supply chain that determines how clearly you think, how quickly you respond, how confidently you communicate, and how consistently you show up when the stakes rise. When that system is fragmented, your career feels unpredictable. When that system is clean, your career becomes coherent. A system that learns becomes a system that scales. A system that scales becomes a system that signals. And a system that signals becomes a system that compounds. The real leverage isn't in the moment you're in, it's in the system that carries you to the next one. Thanks for listening to the Risk Manager's Guide to Money. If this episode helped you see how your internal system shapes your external trajectory, how your emotional supply chain learns, scales, and sends signals to the professional world, share it with someone who's trying to move with more intention in their career. Most people try to change their outcomes by changing their actions, but the real leverage comes from changing the system beneath those actions. Once the internal supply chain becomes clean, the external results begin to compound. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. I'll see you guys next time. Signing off.